All right, so we talked a little bit about inverse functions yesterday, and we're going to start getting into what do the graphs of these look like. And specifically, they call them reciprocal functions, but really what we're going to talk about is anything that where you're dividing by a variable. And where in the cases where basically the top part is smaller than the bottom part, or technically smaller by degree. I guess smaller isn't necessarily the right word to use there because this could be like a 0.5 and it wouldn't be smaller. But in terms of degree, this is degree 1, this would be degree 0. So things where your degree on the bottom is bigger than the top. So this is really just a plain, super simple inverse function. This is where the k value would be 1. And if we graph this, you may or may not have ever seen this before. Maybe you've done it on accident, or maybe, I don't know, maybe you've seen it. But you get something pretty weird here. So if we graph this, we get a graph that looks like this. And specifically what's going on here is there's like two different sections. You have this curve, and then you have this curve, and they never touch each other at all. They actually also never touch either of these lines. So specifically, just to kind of sketch out and give you a picture of what we really have here, is we have a line that approaches but never touches, and then it curves and it approaches but never touches, like that. Then we have the same exact thing going on up here in the first quadrant. And this is actually really weird. We're going to kind of look at this today because of like why does the graph have this shape to it and what's going on. There are some pretty key terms that go with this. One of the big ones you're going to hear a lot over the next couple of weeks is what we call an asymptote. You might remember that from other stuff you did maybe in Algebra 1, but an asymptote is when a graph approaches but never touches a line. So the y-axis right here is an asymptote because this keeps getting closer and closer and closer, but it never actually touches it. It always is closing that distance by a little and a little and a little, but never actually getting there. So this actually has, to give you that word, that the asymptote, this has two asymptotes. It has the y-axis is an asymptote. And as you can probably see here, so is the x-axis. This graph is approaching, but never ever touching the x-axis. And we're going to see that today. I just kind of want to introduce you to that stuff and show you that you are going to get a pretty weird looking graph here. And this is really going to get us into this whole chapter as far as this is the main style of graph, what we call rational functions, or just kind of the general name for these types of these. But we're going to be talking about these for pretty much the entire chapter. And how do you move them? How do you adjust them? What different stuff you can do to them? How do you move the asymptotes? All that kind of stuff is kind of where this chapter is going. So just a little intro for you.